Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, June 4th, 2017, and this is your fun fact of the day. So last week we covered Jacob and Esau, children of Isaac and Rebekah, and how they became enemies of sorts. They do not end up on the greatest terms. Jacob ends up leaving his land and ends up staying with his uncle Laban, where he meets Laban's daughter, Rachel, his first cousin, and then falls in love with her. But let's clear this up. It was a different time. There was a lot less problems with the human genome. Families were a lot more keen on keeping together in some senses. There was a lot less things known as far as problems with keeping that close in the family as first cousins marrying and procreating. Well, Jacob falls in love with Rachel. Uncle Laban agrees. Okay, Jacob, you work for me for 7 years. You will earn the bride price for her. You'll pay it off, basically. Jacob agrees and works 7 years without question. Now, Laban also had another daughter named Leah who was older, and again, back then, a different time, the older usually had to be married first, just the customary thing. So Jacob works for the 7 years. They go to get celebrated, married. Jacob ends up having a little too much to drink. May or may not have been some of Laban's doing. And then Laban sneaks Leah into the ceremony instead of Rachel. Jacob wakes up with his hangover and to find not Rachel next to him, saying, "Why'd you do this to me?" And then Laban says, "It's not customary to marry the young girl first. Leah had to get married first. If you want Rachel, you can work us another 7 years." Jacob agrees to work 7 more years to not only marry his other first cousin, but also his other first cousin's sister. It was a different time. So with these two wives, Jacob ends up having 12 sons. Actually, it wasn't just Leah and Rachel. It was also maidservants. Leah and Rachel gave a servant to Jacob to have sons by, because at some point or another their wombs were closed and God said not open for business. So Jacob has 12 sons, and their names in order of oldest to youngest are Reuben, Simon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, and Dinah, actually a daughter, the only daughter by name mentioned in here, gets snuck in right there, Joseph, and then eventually Benjamin. What? After working for Laban even more years beyond the 14 required to acquire both of his wives, he finally takes his wives, his kids, all of his possessions, and leaves the land, because he's grown a lot. Seems to happen a lot with some of these people in God's stories. They prosper pretty well. Now, he attempts to go back to the land that he fled from, the land of Isaac and Rebekah, his parents, the land that Esau still lives in. Jacob, realizing there's probably still going to be some bad blood there, sends everyone in front of him. Sends gifts to Esau, just warns him. By the way, Jacob is returning. Don't start off by cutting his head off. Just talk a bit, be a little diplomatic, let's work through this before we go straight to the sword. Jacob even says he will serve him and make no trouble for him if needs be. Now after Jacob sends everyone in front of him, his wives, his children, his servants, his possessions, his animals, his livestock, everything goes in front of him, Jacob's actually left alone. And then someone came and wrestled with Jacob through the whole night. A very, very good physical contest, which is actually impressive in itself, considering how just exhausting wrestling in itself can be. Like high school wrestling matches are a grand total of 6 minutes maximum, with 1 minute of possible overtime. And that can be exhausting in itself. Try wrestling with no break whatsoever the entire night. Hours straight. Good Lord. Well, speaking of the Lord, this person's actually God. In some undescribed human form, Jacob actually wrestles with a human God, that's capital G, not just a God, the God, the whole night through. And when the man, God, saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched Jacob's hip socket and instantly Jacob's hip was dislocated. Implies some pretty authoritative power there. So the man, God, says, "Let me go. The day is broken. I need to be leaving." Jacob says, "I'm not letting you go until you bless me, because clearly something is up with this and I want something out of this. Besides the fact that my hip is out of place, I want something good." Man asks, "What is your name?" Jacob says, "I'm Jacob." "What's yours?" He doesn't actually say that. He just says, "I'm Jacob." And then God replies, "Well, your name was Jacob. Now you shall be called Israel. For you have striven with God and men, and have prevailed." Jacob asks, "Please tell me your name." And God replies, "Why do you need to know my name?" So he blesses Jacob. And Jacob becomes known as Israel for how well he strove with God and with men. A formidable person, I guess. He's not one to be won over easily. And we have the story of Jacob/Israel, as he is also known. Genesis chapters 28 through 31, parts of chapter 32, and parts of chapter 35. In other news, today is National Cheese, Cognac, and Cancer Survivors Day. So if you know a cancer survivor, have some cheese and cognac with them, if you can. Celebrate the fact that they're still here. Be appreciative. Hope you've enjoyed this fun fact of the day. See you tomorrow.